This is a Pokemon City Championship held in Glendale, Arizona on November 25th, 2012. This was a game in the top 8. Game 2, Anson versus Bruce Long. I am Bruce on the right. As you can see, I'm wearing my Elekid hat. It's a Rocky helmet with Elekid sitting on it. Anson mulliganed during his first deal, so he redealt, and I won the flip, so I begin. Anson is starting with a Mewtwo. I'm starting with a Landorus. I play a Skyla and get an N because I have no draw supporter in my hand and a not very good start. It would be better if I had a fighting energy, but since I don't, I just go ahead and attach a fire energy and pass. Anson attaches a DCE, an Eviolite, plays a random receiver, and draws a Bianca. The first game between us, Anson won very quickly. I had a very bad start, and he took full advantage of it. He plays Bianca for 2, and he does X-Ball for 60. So hopefully I can get something going here. I play the N, which I got last turn, and I'm hoping to get a hand that I can start doing something with. Even if I am lucky enough to get a fighting energy in this 6 cards group that I draw now, a fighting energy alone isn't gonna do much to Mewtwo. I would only be doing 10 damage at a time, while Mewtwo would knock out my Landorus in 2 more attacks. So I've got to get something else going. I dropped Sigilyph onto the bench, hoping to at least wall Mewtwo, force him to put down a non-EX attacker. And I try a Super Scoop Up to get Landorus out of the way so I can just try to buy myself some time, but unfortunately the Super Scoop Up failed. And there's really nothing else I can do, so I just pass. Anson plays an Ultra Ball, and quite naturally, he will get his own Sigilyph. If he can get his powered up faster than mine, and it sure looks like he's going to because he attaches a psychic energy, so he'll be completely ready to knock out my Sigilyph before I get a chance to knock his out. So he does X-Ball for another 60 against the Landorus. I drop Mewtwo, and I play Computer Search, discarding the last 2 cards in my hand, one of which was a Ho-Oh. And of course, in that situation, what I would get is a Professor Juniper to get a brand new hand of 7 cards. Now, if I were to get really lucky here, say for example in these 7 cards, if I were to get a DCE, an Energy Switch, and a Switch, I could attach the DCE to Mewtwo, switch out the Landorus, play an Energy Switch to move the energy from the Landorus, and I could knock out the Mewtwo in 1 hit. But the odds are pretty much against me getting a hand that good, and of course I don't get it. I play an Ultra Ball, almost discarding the Ho-Oh, but a second Ho-Oh, but I decide instead to discard 2 energies so I can try a Rebirth, try to get myself set up for something, and I get a Tornadus EX off of the Ultra Ball, and I consider my options. Unfortunately, I didn't get a Psychic Energy, but I decide to go ahead and just attach another Fighting Energy to the Sigilyph, hoping to get it powered up next turn if need be. I try a Rebirth, which does succeed, so I get the Ho-Oh and the 2 energy back out. But there's nothing else I can do this turn, so I have to pass, which means the first 3 turns I have not attacked at all and caused any damage, so I am really falling behind. Meanwhile, he attaches an energy to the Sigilyph and he is completely set up and ready for his Sigalith to start doing damage, obviously to knock out my Sigalith before I get the chance. He ends, which gives us both 6 cards. He did not draw a catcher, so my Sigalith is safe for this turn. Anson benches his Meloetta and attaches an Eviolite. Now, as soon as he gets a Psychic Energy on the Meloetta, that can also knock out my Sigalith, but he goes ahead and uses Mewtwo to X-Ball, knock out my Landorus EX, and takes the first 2 prizes of the game. And now I have a real tough time trying to decide which bench Pokemon to bring up. I don't have a Psychic Energy for the Sigalith, and even if I did have a Psychic Energy, if I bring it up, he would just retreat his Mewtwo and use his Sigalith to knock it out. I have a DCE in my hand, but I don't feel right bringing up the Mewtwo. So I decide to bring up the Ho-Oh and hope that I will draw something useful. I get a Tool Scrapper, which gets rid of those pesky Eviolites that he has. But with a DCE being the only energy in my hand, I really, really hate to attach it to the Ho-Oh, only to do 60 damage. Attach the DCE to Mewtwo. I play Town Map, which most good players don't play, but I find it very helpful in this deck. I manually retreat the Ho-Oh, which discards the energy and makes that whole rebirth all for nothing. Play an energy switch to get a 3rd energy onto the Mewtwo and do X-Ball to knock out the Mewtwo. And so I take 2 prizes. Anson is a little hasty. He brought up his Sigalith to be active before I had decided which 2 prizes to take. I took an N and a DCE. Anson benches a Bouffalant with a Fighting Energy attached and plays N. So we will each draw 4 cards, since we both have 4 prizes remaining. I'm feeling a little more confident now that he's attached that energy to the Bouffalant, because there doesn't seem to be anything which could knock out my Mewtwo in one hit, although I would not want to see my Sigalith get knocked out. But he doesn't have a catcher, or decides to go for the Mewtwo anyway, so he does 160 damage on the Mewtwo. Then my Mewtwo has 10 remaining. I now decide to bench another Mewtwo. I try a Super Scoop Up, which succeeds, so I'm able to deny him the prize of that Mewtwo, which was really nice. Now, once again, I'm faced with the decision of what to bring up. I decide to go and bring up the Mewtwo, particularly since I have a DCE and a catcher in my hand, so I can bypass the Sigalith and hit something else. I attach the double colorless energy to Mewtwo. I bench the Mewtwo that I just scooped up. I catcher the Meloetta, and I play Professor Juniper. So now getting a handful of new cards. Unfortunately, I really need to get another Ho-Oh into the deck so that I could get another rebirth going, get energy onto the field. But at the present time, I just don't have it in there. I play an energy switch so that I'm able to do X-Ball and one-shot knockout on the Meloetta. For my prize, I took a catcher, and Anson had brought up Sigalith, plays Professor Juniper, plays Ultra Ball, and unfortunately, he gets a Mewtwo. So it doesn't look like my Mewtwo is long for this world. And sure enough, he pays the retreat on the Sigalith, attaches a double colorless energy to the Mewtwo, and does X-Ball, takes 2 prizes, and now he only needs 2 more prizes to win the game. I bring up Sigalith, and I'm thinking to myself that if I can just knock out his Sigalith, then we'll both be even on prizes, and I might be able to use my Sigalith to stall a little bit until I can get something powered up to take the last 2 prizes. So I play a super scoop up, which succeeds. I take the ho-oh and put it back in my hand because I really need to get another rebirth and get some more energy on the field. I catcher the Sigalith, and I juniper my hand away, hoping to get something that will enable me to knock out the Sigalith. Either some way to get a psychic energy into the discard pile and then a rebirth and an energy switch, or something that will enable me to knock out the Sigalith. I take a quick look to see what I've got in there, and unfortunately the psychic energy that I need is still not there, so that won't work. But maybe there's something else I can do. I also don't like the fact that 2 of my switches are prized, because that means if I put up something with a heavy retreat cost, then I could have trouble getting it back to the bench. But there's really nothing else for me to do here but try a rebirth, unfortunately, which fails, and so that ends my turn and I pass. He attaches a prism energy to Sigalith, plays Bianca, draws 2, and will knock out my Sigalith. So now he just needs 1 prize to win the game. I bring up Mewtwo and try to figure out how there's any way I can possibly make a comeback. The first job must be to try to get rid of that Sigalith, because that Sigalith represents the biggest threat to me. I'm not going to be able to catch her around it forever. So I bench a Terrakion, which, as it happens, that's the only remaining basic that can possibly hit the Sigalith. Fortunately, I do get the rebirth. So I attach 3 energy, a fighting, a fire, and a grass energy to Ho-Oh. Then I play 2 energy switch to move the fighting and fire over to Terrakion, attach a double colorless to Mewtwo and retreat manually, and retaliate on the Sigalith. So that pesky Sigalith is now gone, and all I need to do is to knock out one of his EXs to win the game. Of course, he just needs to knock out any Pokemon, including that Terrakion, which only has 130 HP compared to the EXs. So Anson, after thinking and looking at my discard pile, he brings up Mewtwo. I had taken the switch as a prize on that last turn, and I was beginning to have regrets, thinking I should have taken the fighting energy instead. Anson catches the Mewtwo and thinks about what to do. He attaches another double colorless to Mewtwo and plays N. So his Mewtwo, with the 2 double colorless attached, will only do 160, so my Mewtwo would still be alive, unless he gets something more. He draws 1, and I'm supposed to draw 2. I forgot the second one until he pointed it out, for which I'm grateful. And then he realizes that it wasn't that smart to attach that second double colorless to Mewtwo, because if he does 160, all I need would be either a double colorless energy or a single energy and an energy switch, and then I could X-ball and win the game. So he was verbally expressing his regrets over bringing up the Mewtwo and attaching that energy. And he's trying to think of what the best thing to do would be. He takes another look through my discard pile and decides that it would be much safer just to retreat the Mewtwo, send up the Bouffalant, and pass. Because even if I were able to knock out the Bouffalant somehow, that still wouldn't win the game for me. I would still have to knock out one of his EXs. So he seems to have made the right move in retreating, because I did have the double colorless in hand, and I attach it to Mewtwo and play N. So if I could get an energy switch and a catcher, that would win me the game, but of course that would be a little too much luck to hope for. and I just do X-ball for 40, and he gets Juniper, and that's going to be all it takes. Considering how slow the game started for me, it's amazing that I was able to come so close at the end. But he attaches a third energy to the Mewtwo, plays Switch, X-ball, and that is the game. Anson went on to win first place.